Samantha Housman, you're a producer of Wander Darkly, which is about a couple trying to process what happened after a traumatic car accident. It's inspired by an accident that actually happened to writer-director Tara Mealy. So what was it like working with her on, to bring such a personal story to the screen?
First, let me commend you on saying her name correctly, because most
I
people
looked it
are
up. I always look it up.
well done. We're like, how do you say her name? Um, it was a beautiful experience. I think the movie is very much based on Tara's. It was definitely based on an accident that she got in with her husband. When her husband is alive and fine. Um, but the entire story of that movie is very much based on her marriage. And I think, um, when you work on something that's like deeply personal to someone, it's a very emotional experience and a very rewarding experience, but also, you're asking a lot from your filmmaker. So I think you're sort of constantly having to be that support system for them, and I love that. I love playing that role. So it was a beautiful experience.
And the film has like this very kind of unusual magical realist kind of structure as these characters are not quite sure what reality is. Like, what was it like, developing that script and the way that story would unfold on screen?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the script very much like deals with like grief and regret and trauma and sort of love and loss in a very, very creative way, right? Like I think our mind protects us from all of these things in real life in very unique and creative ways. And Tara's mind certainly works in a very unique way. And I think she feels like her mind certainly doesn't work in a sort of like linear kind of way. Like for her, time is definitely not linear, right? Like if she's like fighting with her husband about something, like if they're like fighting about like dishwasher, like like her husband's fighting about the dishwasher and Tara is like fighting about something that happened in like 2004, right? Like she's very much like reliving things over and over and over. And I think she was very interested in exploring this idea of like reliving a relationship and relooking at sort of trauma and grief and regret and ultimately having to accept sort of love through that, but through the eyes of two different people in this relationship. And yes, it meant like looking at what a relationship would look like through the point of view of one character and then another character and reliving those memories both in her point of view and his point of view, which made time very slippery. Um, and it was really like hard to make that movie because I think for the actors, it's a very, very emotional journey for both of these actors that are having to go to like really, really deep, dark places. But also, it's a very like technical film where constantly, Tyra's having to be like, can you just like do that one more time? And like, I'm gonna swing the camera around and I need you to just like look to the right and the camera's gonna drop down and we're gonna like push through a wall. And she's like, I promise it'll work. Like, it's gonna work. It's gonna work in the edit. Please, it's gonna work. And there's like so much trust that you have to like put like in her and you have to kind of keep asking your actors to do this. And it was challenging, and it's so execution dependent and you don't really know if it's gonna work until you're sort of like in the edit. Um, so I don't know. I think your question was like, how was it? It was it was fucking scary. How it was, excuse my language, but yeah, it was hard.
Yeah. And on such a technical film, does that like make any budget constraints or time constraints even more kind of pressure filled and packed?
Yeah, I mean, people ask like, you know, like, how was it making the movie? And I'm like, oh, it was like we made like The Revenant, you know, like we shot the movie in like 24 days with like no money and moved every day. And it was very challenging to make a movie of that size with that scope, with limited resources. But I think we had this guiding light of like Tara had this like saying on set. Like we never did anything just for the sake of like doing trickery with the camera, right? Like it was never like, hey, it would be really like super dope to like walk through that wall, or like let's like pan up from the garage and all of a sudden be in an ocean and have dolphins there, right? There was always this saying that was like, I know that that sounds crazy. I know you don't believe that happened, but I was there that day. It was beautiful. It happened. I know you don't believe me, but it happened. I saw it. So it was always like meant to feel like everything that happens in that movie is meant to feel like it could have happened. That Adrian, that Santa Miller who plays Adrian, that's really happening in her head. Like we didn't just do anything to do it for fun. So I think that helped as our like guiding light, to never be like, oh, well, they did it like this on Eternal Sunshine, or like they did it like this on this other movie. We have to have like those tools and those scripts, and um, constantly like looking for ways to reinvent the wheel. But yeah, it took a lot of coordination and a lot of like, constant meetings with our cinematographer and our editor and our visual effects supervisor and Tara, our director, our writer director, like all day, every day on set. And I'm like literally going like line by line, like, wait, what was she wearing? What was Santa wearing in this scene? Like, where are we cutting to? In the next line, you know, like a lot of continuity tracking and a lot of planning on how we're going to make this work in the edit. Yeah.
And the film is very female forward in terms of not just, you know, Tara, the writer director, you know, women on the production team, a lot of women behind the scenes, and of course Sienna Miller, the star of the film, in front of the camera. What was it like, you know, work on a set, like, because you know this is still a male dominated business in a lot of ways. So like I don't know how often you have a set that's as female inclusive.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, somebody said to me the other day, like, "Oh, the movie kind of feels like Marriage Story, but from like a female perspective." I was like, "What does that mean?" Um, and then I started thinking about like how many women were like on our set and how that bleeds into like the making of the movie. You know, we didn't really set out to like have so many women. I mean, we were very actively trying to, in both in front of and behind the camera, have underrepresented voices in department head positions and on our crew. I think Tara was very much drawn to a sort of like feminine energy, which meant that a lot of those positions ended up being women. Um, how was it? It was great. I mean, it was pretty awesome. I don't think you necessarily ever want like too much of anything. Like I'm a big believer in like parity, you know, like having uh, representation across the board is nice. Um, but it was wonderful. I mean, it was really. Well, I think we had a lot of feminine energy on set, but we also had a lot of women that like occupied like a lot of masculine energy on set, and that like I think bled into the creative process in a really wonderful way um, that I wasn't really used to either. So it was good.
And then you brought the film to Sundance, and big part of independent film is getting distribution and like what was that process like? Of course, you didn't know. No one knew that right around the corner from there was going to be a pandemic that would complicate all distribution. So, like, what was that process?
Well, I think going to Sundance is like a wonderful experience, and now that we're in this like pandemic, I'm so grateful, especially for Tara, that we got to premiere the movie in front of an audience, and that she um, had this like wonderful standing ovation, and um, it was a really wonderful experience having audience members like come up to Tara and say things like, "I've been in a relationship with grief my whole life, and this movie gives me a place to put that grief." Or like there were lots of people that came up to her and said, "I think this movie saved my marriage." And we had one woman come up to her one day and say, "I think this movie saved my marriage." And the next day, her husband came up to her and said, "My wife told me to come see this movie, and I think it saved my marriage." And that was a wonderful and really meaningful experience, especially for Tara, since the movie was so deeply personal to her. Um, and it's great to be able to sell your film out of Sundance. I've certainly made quite a few movies that have gone to festivals where I have not sold them out of out out of Sundance or other festivals. So um, it's always really exciting when a distributor believes in your movie and your filmmaker, and wants to um, bring it out into the world. Um, it's been interesting releasing it during this time. I mean, I certainly never imagined that um, we would be releasing the movie during a pandemic and a quarantine. Having said that, like, I think the film offers a sort of emotional catharsis that people like desperately need right now. Um, and the other thing I think the film does, or at least for me, is like at the end there's this feeling of like hopefulness, or like that life is like so delicate, and that you kind of have to like hold on to these moments, or these people that are like so important to you, and that it could just kind of vanish in a second. And it's sort of this kind of like meta moment that it's kind of like coming out during this pandemic, when we all have these feelings and they're right in front of us, and we have nowhere to put them. And so I think actually weirdly like watching Wander Darkly gives you this like catharsis of those feelings and somewhere to put it. So in a way I'm sort of grateful that like people are home in their living rooms and like can find the movie. And Lionsgate has been like the most amazing partners. Like I have to say, having made quite a few indie movies, and it's like you're always like, "Oh, I don't like the artwork," or like, "Are you really gonna release it that way?" Or like, it's just there's always like always an issue. Like they have been the most supportive, amazing, filmmaker friendly company, at least for us.
Well, congratulations on the film, and thank you so much for talking to me.